Hello and namaskar. Welcome to episode number 78, January 20th, 2021, the inauguration day of the new incoming President of the United States, Joe Biden. Sree Chityalaji, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel.
Namaskar and good morning to everybody.
Sir, we have a lot of interesting developments, including the sighting of Jack Ma. We have also got a look at what Yellen's economic policies are going to be. Because we are going to coin the term Yellenomics, shout and scream and you shall be heard. And also a big reveal from the Biden administration that they will be shutting down the Keystone XL pipeline that could cost a lot of jobs. We're going to analyze the pros and cons of all this and more. So I request you to start our conversation today with the inauguration that is about to take place in a few hours from now.
Great, sir. I think we're all set for the inauguration. President-elect Mr. Biden will be coming on a chartered plane rather than the U.S. government plane. He will be landing in the Capitol and going for his inaugural function. I think we charted the plan, which is the course of events. One is the ceremony at the White House. Then by then Trump would have left. Then he does a virtual inauguration or virtual. This will be a virtual inauguration. They've been told that nobody to come in person. There won't be anybody in the mall. So this is the launch of the event. So it is going to be a day-long ceremony of then he, after the oath swearing in and oath taking, then he goes to the Arlington Cemetery and places the wreaths. And he kicks off his first day of the agenda. And he is ready to sign off on 17 different executive orders, which rolls back the Trump's programs and then reestablishes the Obama-Biden era policies and programs, which ranges from, for example, the immigration, the asylum seekers, a path for normalization of 11 to 12 million illegal immigrants, who are here, and that was declined. The other is the census, which just they won in Supreme Court. That is also going to be reversed through. So they're going to delay the census. They're going to include everybody in each state, legal and illegal migrants, and they will be included into the count. So there's a series of programs, including travel. He lifted the travel restrictions. Plus, also he is going to remove this word, especially Muslim destinations. And I think he has listed a whole list of countries which were initially restricted to travel to United States. The visa processing will commence. He's apparently set up as Department of Homeland Security to kind of look into that, and the TSA to initiate the process for the visa. So that process kicks off, countries like Somalia, Syria, Libya, and so on and so forth. There's a whole list. So he is ready. The other thing is the $10,000, which is very important for many. They're looking at absorbing or waiving up to $10,000 in principal from each of the students, the student loan outstandings. So there's a range of programs that kicks off his activities today.
Let's take a quick look at yesterday's farewell address by Donald Trump. I think he took the high road in his farewell speech, didn't he?
He took a very high road. It was at least for those who are Trump believers, they call it as a classic kind of a speech. He called it as, we started the moment has just begun. My departure doesn't mean the moment, it only is going to accelerate and progress further. He wished the success for the new administration that is going to come in. He did not name Biden specifically, but he said he wishes the new administration. He very strongly, again and again, condemned the attack on the Capitol. He says this is not reflective of our values and so on and so forth. So therefore, again, he reiterated that point. Then from that point onwards, he began to list a whole series of achievements and what he accomplished, be it the West Asia Peace Accord, be it the renegotiation or making China accountable, He also talked about the Indo-Pacific and the Quad, the security arrangements that were redone, which is in consistent with his kind of policies. He talked about the renegotiation of the NAFTA, which was called as the United States Mexico Canada Act. So he talked about the favor, the kind of the. Then he talked about the tax cuts and the per capita increase that was yeah, his number that he gave is between $8,000 to $10,000. So he ran a whole slew of activities from domestic to foreign policies to tax, and he all until the pandemic came. He said he had brought the unemployment down to about 3.5%. Then he also talked about the pandemic and the challenges that one had to face. And he said no other government would have done what he did, which is within 12 months, within 10 months, that they came up with vaccines. And the vaccine rollout program has just commenced. It has its problems, but he said, we did it. We promised and we committed, and we got the vaccine. So I think it was. These are all, those who believe. These are very specific and very clear. One cannot dispute. One can agree or disagree on whether you believe in those things. That's a different policy. Then he talked about, of course, the security, which is the immigration policy.
Now, let's take a quick look at the various things going around in the United States. Chuck Schumer and many other senators have weighed in on Donald Trump. So I think this Senate impeachment process is still, people are talking about it. I don't know if that is going to be the first thing that the Senate will take up, or if it's going to be looking at what the nation needs, such as the COVID response, COVID vaccination, and stimulus, and so on. What are your thoughts going into the new administration?
I think the first priority for them is going to be, which is already underway, is the confirmation of his nominees for the key positions. So Janet Yellen, really kind of sailed through the process. There was no objections at all from the Republicans. The Senate hearing was going on with Antony Blinken, which is the state secretary. So then you have the defense. So that is one of the top priorities. So people can, once approved, they begin to take up their positions. I think the second priority is going to be, in my view, the whole list of processes around how because we are tied Senate 50-50, right? So we need a gridlocker. So the rules around filibuster, the process and passage, I think that's another item that would be agreed to. The stimulus would be the third item, in my view, before they get down to the articles of impeachment. As at last night, the articles of impeachment had not been received. So probably she would be sending it today. The Nancy Pelosi, the House Majority Leader, would be sending it today, so that would be taken up. To your point, which you have said, there are both sides of the camp, which is Mitch McConnell has, and which has created a little bit of a stir-up, basically said, it was President Trump's speech, which President Trump and some other members who spoke and fed lies, which resulted in this instigation of the mob to do what they did in Capitol. So that was his very strong statement from him. Chuck Schumer says he should be eligible. He should not be eligible to run for office. So it's very clear what their agenda is. If they convict him, the conviction is around to make him ineligible for any of those things. Whether they're going to withdraw other things that come with it, he's entitled to an office, entitled to personal security. Whether they're going to do all of those things, we don't know. But it remains to be seen. It also remains to be seen whether they have the 67 votes to kind of impeach him. And then, of course, there's the constitutional challenge that will crop up, which is to say, can you impeach a president who is not in office? So that, in my view, would be the first day's packed agenda at the Senate.
So would this be a good time for us to take a look at Yellenomics, or do you want to do it as part of the market?
We can Yellenomics, since you have raised the topic, we'll get into Yellenomics. Ellen, is a very well-known figure, and she comes from represents very much the liberal social economic framework. But having said that, she adapted quite well, and then she came in during the period of transition from Bernanke to Yellen, but fortunately under the Obama-Biden era. So she managed the economics, managed the monetary policy quite well in terms of rates. Now, personally, I can give an opinion, which is my opinion, which the people agree with it or not. We can actually do a compare and contrast, and we can do it on a chart on a separate day. I believe that she has learned a trick from the Steve Mnuchin model, who comes from the industry. Steve Mnuchin model is that when you have a major economic effect, when you do a large lump of capital as a one single stimulus, the effect will be a V-shaped recovery. That we have seen, the V-shape. The jobs dropped to 14 point, unemployment dropped to about 15%. Was at 15%, and then it dropped within 6 months to about 7%, and then it was going down to about 6.7, 6.2 before it picked up. The retail sales recovered during this period of this 6 months, what it was pre-pandemic to what it is during pandemic. That is the effect of the stimulus program. To some extent, the small businesses were able to sustain through the PPP program. So I think that, so what she has learned from that is, which is different to the Obama period, where they were doing smaller chunks of capital. So it took a fairly longer time in terms of reaching the normal recovery curve, which is anything from more than 18 months it took for them to do that in the 2008 financial crisis. So Yellenomics is about now, large. Then she goes on to add to that point, which is the corporate rates have to increase because you have to have a funding mechanism to offset. And so she's proposing, she hasn't touched on personal, but she is proposing a corporate tax hike of 28% from 21%. She feels that this would. Now here comes the catch. She says when we do this increase, we must coordinate with other countries to make sure that we are equally competitive, not uncompetitive. I don't know any country in the world which is going to say, oh, United States, no problem. You can keep the rates at 28%. We'll try to keep it around 23, 24%. Now, I'm not trying to be facetious here, but I think United States has to make its own decision, and I'm sure that's what she means. So I think that her view is, she used the phrase from, we discussed this, which is $350 billion was allocated to PPP, but 350 was actually allocated to local, and we're going to talk about that on another day. But that basically reflects her kind of proposition, which is to say that you need a large stimulus, you need to have tax increases, and then she began to play the same program, which is around the green energy and Paris Accord and institutions of governance where we need to be part of. Now, when you look at the team that would be under her, which is, we discussed it yesterday, they reflect what you call either Gensler or Chopra. Both are, very Warren kind of nominees, very strong regulation. So whether there's going to be very strong regulation and how exactly industry will fight it out will all become part of this new Yellenomics type of model. So very different to, so of course, she's a fiscal policy person more than the monetary policy person. That was her role previously. But she is very comfortable with world leaders and world monetary, either treasurers or finance ministers or so on. So I think she will, in my humble view, that she is going to do quite well. And she will probably carry the Biden administration as a voice. And she's always very measured. She's very measured and she's very composed. So I think that, but I may not agree with her. more a pro-markets guy rather than a centralist left. So therefore, There's nothing that I would undo with the Trump policies, but that's not me. That's Biden, right? So Mr. Biden has his own views, and she would be supportive of that.
Now, one of the first announcements that came out of the new administration is the claim that they are going to shut down the Keystone XL pipeline. Now, this has had a lot of controversy over the Obama years. It was debated to death, and finally they gave approval, and now they are again going to shut it down. What are the ramifications of this, and more importantly, who does this benefit?
Well, first and foremost, this is a very controversial project, which is always the Canadians wanted this because this helps them. And also, it helps creating jobs around the energy belt running from Canada right through central United States. The project was hung up because of the passage of the areas has environmental issues potentially disturbing the environmental balances around that area where the pipe goes through. Now, Trump felt that that will be managed by the industry because we have had, several areas where we do this. The industry has managed it quite well. And he felt that it was a strategic important in terms of the energy independence as well as the energy reserves that United States needs to acquire. United States has had is now a net exporter of the energy even without the Key Line project. Given the whole notion of fracking and everything being green under Biden administration, this has been under the radar of this green group and the anti kind of fracking group. Though he flip-flopped between I never said fracking, I said fracking, etc. But he's now being more kind of explicit. So it's, to me, if I give you a direct answer, to me, it is basically in my view, the constituency is the green group.
Well, let's take a quick look at global events, and I want to touch upon a couple of things again related to business, but that we will do it at the end of the politics part of the global events. So, the first thing that I wanted to touch upon was that the Italian premier Giuseppe Conte has won a vote of confidence, and that means that the Italian government lives to fight another day. We remember, I mean, viewers will remember that there was the talk about Conte government collapsing following the revelations that came of the role of Italy in the United States elections. Does this mean that now everything is all closed and nothing is going to come out of all those questions being raised?
Nobody is talking about any of those events because there seems to be chains of events. Nashville is forgotten. You remember the Nashville bombing, right? What's happened is just kind of washed away. There's a very, very major event that took place, whether you call it bombing or suicide, whichever way you want to call it. Then we had this major revelation that the Dominion servers in Germany, in Frankfurt, Barcelona, and the machines were manipulated, or the data flew from Germany to Italy and from Italy to United States. And there was a revelation and a prosecution. In fact, it went to their local Supreme Court. What's going to happen? It just seems to have quietened down. Now Mr. Biden is the president. Then your own famous question that you asked me, what has happened to that pipe bomb, which was discovered. Twice you asked, again, the pipe bomb. Nobody has a clue as to what's happened to the pipe bomb. Then the laptop, which is Nancy Pelosi laptop, that's been discovered. So the stories, but Nancy says that I don't have anything in it, so let's kind of go on. So I'm sorry, I went from Giuseppe Conte to this because these are all I'm just trying to create a story, which is to say that all this stuff is now a history.
Oh, well, you've missed out on one, Hunter Biden.
Yes, I missed out on that one. Also, I missed out the breaking story this morning is the is very famous Chris Steele, the MI6, who has revealed, who has been declassified the documents. If you remember, the James Comey investigation opened around Clinton access, Clinton email scandal. This name kind of popped up, and so that's now been made, that those documents have been declassified. I gather there's also going to be declassification of some of the documents around this November 6th riots, what the findings were. But let's see. So I don't want to deviate from the global story which you were moving on. But there's a whole raft of those things. I think that'll all just be, let's kind of not look behind, but look ahead.
Yes. And, if you take a look at, sorry to look behind first to look ahead, if you look at what Trump had accomplished towards the end of his presidency, there was a very noticeable shift away from Europe and towards the Quad, which comprised of India, Japan, Australia, and the United States. Now, Macron is calling on Biden for greater military involvement. So, under the democratic dispensation, do you see a shift back to the old days of Paris Accord and taking the European community along and so on and so forth, and perhaps a little less emphasis on Quad? What are your thoughts?
I'll give you a very kind of a direct answer to this. Paris Accord is yes, that's one of the priorities that will be signed today. Back to Paris Accord, back to WHO to be a strategic partner with all partner and member nations so we can all move forward, says Mr. Biden. So WHO is on. UN has not featured, so that'll come on, the UN. So Macron is very smart. So therefore he said, hey, you remember that usually the Democrats are very pally ally with Europeans and more invest time and resources with NATO. So we want to make sure that you do not forget that. And, this is again a contrarian foreign policy differences. Somehow the Democrats believe Russia is the threat. So you will see all the think tanks around Washington, D.C. talking about Russia as a potential great threat. Remember Bill Burns or William Burns, who comes from Carnegie Foundation, who was the head of the Carnegie Foundation, former Assistant Secretary of State, right? He's going to now head CIA. So therefore, he also has a favored kind of flavor, which is, Russia, said to be. So to your smart question, which is namely, and Mr. Macron's foray is to say, turn your eye towards NATO and be my partner because Europe has few problems, I think. Does it mean it's going to take eyes away from Asia? I can give you 3 examples. They no longer are talking about Indo-Pacific. They're talking about Asia-Pacific. Okay? So therefore, it's very clear, number 1. Number 2, they have no specific mention to Quad, which simply implies they don't believe in it. Number 3, South China Sea. They are talking about Kurt Campbell, as already mentioned. Kurt Campbell is the designated representative or secretary in charge of Asia, right? And he's fairly well known in those circles. If I have to politely, I can see some anonymous people. I wish they can put their names up in PGurus and put the data. And I stand by my word, and I have said this time and again, even in debates with several people, it is Obama, Biden who slept and allowed South China Sea to be occupied by China, going back to 2008, 2009, and when the initial tussle that happened between Philippines and China on the South China in the Scarborough Shoal that happened, and somehow this Kurt Campbell was in charge. He said then he will negotiate a kind of a transaction. Only you don't negotiate with Chinese because nothing happens. So that fell away. Encroachments happened. International Court of Justice ruled, and China said, I don't follow ICJ, end of story. So to me, Quad is gone, Asia Pacific is up. Kurt Campbell has already stated that he's going all the way to Indian Ocean, that is to say basically it's Asia Pacific with no Indo. Even James Crabtree has written an article that Indian Ocean going up to Djibouti, which we touched yesterday, is of strategic interest. So all these changes are coming.
Quick look at what Pompeo, the outgoing Secretary of State, said that the Chinese genocide against Muslims is the crime of the century. And I'm going to add to that UK lawmakers debate that they are debating genocide clause to all the deals that United Kingdom might make with China. So this is now beginning to come to the front burner, isn't it?
It is. I think if you listen to, we have not heard Anthony Blinken because he's not yet been formally confirmed, right? But Janet was, and Janet is given her proverbial prowess. And then Kurt being a secretary who doesn't need to formally go through. We'll have to see what Mr. Blinken's views are on this. There's a general belief that the China toughness policy will be continued under the Biden administration. They're not going to change. That's reflected in the statements of Yellen. How tough the toughness is, I don't know. Whereas Pompeo's, Trump's administration was very strong. The unusual thing about the UK situation that you have alluded to is UK is recognizing that this human rights violation, how do you kind of legitimize a trade policy which embeds the human rights issues? Which also embeds some of the trade policies of China. You can't use trade policies because you have the WTO framework. So what they've done is they have now got a law passed where in local British courts, if you make a decision, if there is decided through evidence and witness and so on, that there is a genocide taking place, then they will put a caveat, which is to say that trade pacts with such countries is prohibited.
That's a big statement, and let's see how that's going to play out. But I want to draw your attention to India and to the new claims that construction has started around November last year, October, November last year, in a portion of Arunachal, where it was claimed that this is a new intrusion. And this was an article that was written by Brahma Chalani that has been the talk of the town, if you will, in India as to whether India was caught napping again. There's also questions about what China is doing in the Uttarakhand part of the LAC, the line of actual control. Can you kind of give us an idea of where things stand? Is this something that we should be concerned about as being born out of India? Plus, is India keeping quiet, or India also is reinforcing on their side of the perceived LAC? What are your thoughts?
I'll try to give answers where I have a reasonable idea about the answers. As far as this Arunachal situation is concerned, it seems to be a political puff that has come out. This land has been occupied since 1959 by the Chinese. What is correct, though, that the construction activity has occurred and very visible through satellite images, both US as well as the Indian satellite images of little villages. Previously there used to be intruders, or there used to be army positions coming, fairly close encroach, just as what happened in Galwan Valley. Now, this is more like a village, which is namely comprising of about 110 houses that has come up, in that particular region. Now, is that true? The answer is yes. Both the Minister for External Affairs, the head of the armed forces, as well as Secretary Pompeo, have been very explicit that China has been trying to alter the unilateral, what you call as the unilateral change of border, right? Unilateral change of border situation, or unilateral line of control changes without any consultations and discussion, especially around the disputed. So you have two borders, then you have a buffer area. They've also been coming into the buffer area, as it happened in the other side, which is the Ladakh Leh areas, right? So, and then they had to be pushed back, and there was a negotiated retreat. So the answer is yes. China is the security pundits, and based on some of the data that we have seen, Himalayan kingdom is very much within their radar. We may see more incursions. Is India keeping quiet? Your question? No, India is not keeping quiet. India has built more infrastructure that one can think of, especially in the last 12 months. and more so ever since this Galwan Valley kind of incident came up. They built more infrastructure. So and also they are better prepared. The entire Rafael fleet is deployed in that area. BrahMos missiles is deployed in that area. The Agni missiles is deployed, which are nuclear capable in that area. The B-1, B-1 bombers from United States is deployed in that specific area. I think more than 100, 120 LCJ Tejas fleet is in that area, recognizing. They also have ordered and they continue to order these mobile vehicles which can facilitate large, quick building of the bridges as well as navigation in the high altitude. They have also got drones that has been supplied by United States. And they are now going to manufacture domestic drones from DRDO. They also have light tanks, a whole huge fleet of light tanks. Then, of course, the Chinook helicopters that is also being licensed and leased. So if you kind of look at the parade and the kind of the whole activity, India is well prepared. They recognize this is an area which is under threat. So therefore, whether they have any occupations, we will never know because that's the providence of secrecy. China may tell us that you have occupied, these areas, but we're not going to get that from India. So to summarize, yes, there was a place. Yes, India is now far more well prepared. Yes, it has also allies working with them. At least until recently, it was India, France, and even Israel. And Britain had said that it will even have boots on the ground to preserve the richness and the tradition of the Himalayan kingdom to support India, should it have to get into a fight with the Chinese. There's only one thing that is in favor of India with regard to this issue from Biden administration. Biden administration does support one Tibet policy. It was a unanimous decision that was made. It's a what you call non-partisan decision that was made in the Senate and the House. There is an allocation of $1.2 billion in stimulus 2 package. If you recall, we listed this under the other Chachka items. This $1.2 billion has. So therefore, to that extent, United States may continue to kind of support in making sure that the China. But China has its eyes set on Himalayan region, South China Sea. The question that is being asked is the next foray is Taiwan.
Yes, and we will see, won't we? Now, let's take a quick look at global markets, and I just want to kind of pick up the pace here a little bit because we are coming to the end of our program, and I don't want to take too much time here, if you will, sir. U.S. markets are looking promising based on stimulus talks. The foreign markets, not so much. The more important thing is there has been a Jack Ma sighting in a video link, and this is coming out of from China. We have to wait and see. The location has not been revealed, but and we don't know if there's going to be a newspaper like Wall Street Journal with a certain time and date to tell us that it was indeed taken today. We don't have that information yet. But suffice to say, there was a Jack Ma sighting. The most important thing that we forgot to touch upon yesterday, that I'd like you to touch upon today, is the French giant Total investment of $2.5 billion into the Adani Group. Can you shed some light on this?
Well, I think it's a very strategic. Adani has been focused on the renewable energy. They're one of the largest producers of alternate energy, especially solar, in the world. The $2.5 billion investment is into Adani Energy Green Limited, AEGL. And that gives them access to 20% stake in AEGL into the broad renewable energy resources. Plus, it also gives them access into 50% stake, very specifically in the solar energy assets that Adani Group manages.
Well, we wish Total good luck in this endeavor. and it's going to be interesting. It's the importance, I think, that is underlined here is that the world recognizes that India is going to be a big player in green energy, especially solar, perhaps in wind, and we don't know if they're going to be looking at other forms of energy such as hydrogen fuel cell and so on. But this is interesting times ahead. We have to wait and see what the Biden administration does vis-a-vis China. Will it toe the same line that was put down by Trump? Will it be more aggressive? Will it be less aggressive? We'll have to wait and see. Sridharji, thanks once again for joining us. And viewers, please do subscribe to our channel. Your support is very important. You can refer us to your family and friends. We are trying to scale the 250,000 mark first and onwards up to 1 million. And we will really appreciate it if you can refer us to your friends and your families, and also if you could donate to our cause. Thank you very much, Sridharji, and we'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place.
Thank you and namaste.